Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the May 9th, 2019 regular meeting of the Kern County Planning Commission. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Ashley?
Here.
Mr. Judge? Mr. McGifty? Mr. Sprague?
Here.
Mr. Sprague? Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Simon? Here.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is commissioner member announcement or reports.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask staff to contact former Commissioner Melissa Frank and try to get a schedule with her to see what her schedule's like to give her recognition for her fine service on the Planning Commission since she retired at the last meeting. So could you make contact with her and just see how that works out?
We will. Commissioner Sprague will be happy to. You know, I know it might be a little bit longer than usual just because her circumstances are a little bit different, but we would absolutely be happy to bring back a recognition for her service on the Planning Commission.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr.
She
Chairman.
didn't completely sneak it in on us, but it was kind of unannounced. Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the April 25th, 2019 meeting.
If there are no comments, I would make a motion to approve the minutes of April 11th.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. We'll go verbal on this one. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 None opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is cases withdrawn or requests for continuance. Mr. Murphy, we cover that, please?
Chairman Ashley, thank you. I do. There's one item. This is Precise Development Plan Zone Change Case 19, Map 10327. Precise Development Plan number 5, Map 10327. Our applicant is Mr. Morales by Brian Morales. The staff recommendation is to continue that project until May 23rd, 2019. That completes the reading of cases withdrawn or requests for continuance.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. These items are scheduled before the Planning Commission, which are being recommended for approval by the staff, and the applicant has been informed.
Chairman Ashley, I'm sorry. Sure. Your commission does need to take action to continue that case until May 23rd.
Sorry about that.
Chairman, if there's no comments from other commissioners, I make a motion to continue as stated by the staff and on the record.
I'll make a second for that.
Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor say aye.
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 Actually, we'll cast the electronic votes on this one.
Can do
4
that
ayes,
too.
1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we're at the consent agenda. These items are scheduled before the Planning Commission, which are being recommended for approval by the staff, and the applicant has been informed of any special conditions and has no objection. The hearing on these items may be expedited if no member of the commission or audience wishes to comment or ask questions on the case. So we have 3 cases. Mr. Murphy, will we cover these, please?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case is case number 1. However, you did receive some additional comments from the public regarding case number 1. So staff's recommendation based on that, I would recommend that that be pulled from the consent calendar and not be considered on the consent calendar at this time. So therefore, I'm only going to read cases number 2 and 3. Case number 2, this is conditional use permit number 30, map 79. Our applicant is Stephen Hansen by Scarpool and Associates. This project is located at 19608 Broken Court in the Shafter area. The request before your commission this evening is a conditional use permit to allow for the storage of up to 50 pounds of explosive material accessory to an existing oil and gas well service yard in an M2 PD district. This explosive material storage would be accessory and used on the oil and gas well service yard under the previously approved Precise Development Plan number 18, map number 79. The staff recommendation is to adopt conditional use permit in accordance with the recommended conditions and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution. Case number 3 is general plan amendment number 2, map 9-9. Our applicant is Juan Ponce. This project is located on the southeast corner of Matthews Avenue and Casey Avenue in the Delano area. This request is an amendment to the circulation element of the Kern County General Plan to eliminate the reservations of approximately 300 feet segment of a midsection line as a collector highway alignment and approximately 661 feet segment of a section line as an arterial highway alignment. The staff recommendation is to advise the Planning Commission to recommend the Board of Supervisors to approve the general plan amendment as requested and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution. That completes the reading of the consent calendar tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Any questions or comments related to these?
Oh, need to ask if there's anybody that wants anything pulled.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment or remove any of these cases? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, items number 2 and number 3, with polling number item number 1 to be heard in its regular place in the agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Four ayes, one vacant.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Commissioner Ashley. Case number 2 is final, so I do need to read the right of appeal for case number 2. Case number 3 was only a recommendation, so it will be scheduled for the board's final consideration. But again, as applying to case 2, for projects where the Planning Commission action is final, those actions are subject to appeal to the Board of Supervisors by any interested person, and no development proposed by any application may be authorized until after the final date of appeal. An appeal may be filed with the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department located at 2700 M Street, Suite 100 in Bakersfield, with a filing fee of $540 on forms available to Planning and Natural Resources Department. The filing must be made within 14 days of and including the date of this hearing. If no appeal is received, the action of the Planning Commission is final.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. So now we'll go back to the public hearing for case number 1. Will you introduce this case, please, Mr. Murphy?
I will. Thank you, Chairman Ashley. So the request before your commission this evening is consideration of conditional use permit number 36, map number 144. The applicant for this permit is Mr. and Mrs. Navarro. The project site is located at 16,000 Comanche Drive. It's located on a 6.72 acre parcel within unincorporated Kern County. The site is located directly west and north of the city of Arvin and their city boundaries, near the northwest intersection of East Bear Mountain Boulevard and South Comanche Drive. The project you are considering this evening includes a conditional use permit that would authorize a farm machinery and equipment repair facility in an A district. Specifically, implementation of the project would include construction of a 900 square foot office and a 4,725 square foot shop. As shown on the site plan, the project will occupy approximately 1.33 acres of the parcel, which does not include the required sump lot. Access to the site is proposed off South Comanche Drive. Sewer will be provided by Engineered Septic Systems, and water will be provided by the Arvin Community Services District. The site itself is currently vacant land located adjacent to existing residences, offices, commercial uses, and other agricultural designated lands. I would note for your commission that although the aerial that was provided shows a structure on it, that aerial is old and that structure has been removed from the project site. The site itself has a general plan map code designation of 8.4 and is zoned A, which is our exclusive agricultural district. As presented for consideration by your commission this evening, the facility itself will operate from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, and from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Saturdays. Services will include the repairing of and the installation of tires and vehicle alignments for farm trucks, machinery, and other agricultural-related equipment. During the course of processing this request, staff received 4 comment letters as outlined on pages 2 through 4 of your staff report. 3 of the comment letters received were from county departments requesting specific conditions be included as part of the project consideration by your commission. I would note for your commission's understanding that those requested conditions have been included in the packet that is before you this evening. The 4th comment was from the city of Arvin expressing concerns regarding the use of septic systems on the project site. In addition, your commission was provided some additional handouts, which I will also discuss later this evening from the city of Arvin. But before I get there, I'd like to comment on and identify for your commission some of the responses to those comments and concerns raised by the city of Arvin. Again, as identified in their comment letter that they provided this evening and through separate conversations with staff, It is our understanding that the City of Arvin's ultimate desire is that the project incorporate into the city limits and connect to their existing sewer facilities and be subject to existing City of Arvin development standards. In response to these comments, what I'd like to do is take this opportunity to provide some of those responses for your consideration this evening. First, regarding the use of engineered septic system, there is no evidence in the record to support the comment that implementation of this one project, including the use of an engineered septic system approved by Kern County Environmental Health Department, would result in any health and safety issues to the City of Arvin. The project itself and proposal includes a CUP for a single facility. There's no expectation that implementation of this project would lead to any additional developments within this planning area. Additionally, unlike within the administrative boundaries of the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan, again, this project is located within the Kern County General Plan area, the Board of Supervisors have not identified nor adopted any specific policies that either require or encourage that any development in these outlying areas connect to public sewers within this planning area. So again, unlike Metro Bakersfield, we do not have any adopted policies that specify that new commercial development must connect to public sewer. Your commission should be advised at this time that the City of Arvin is in the process of evaluating and pursuing potential changes to their identified sphere of influences, as outlined in the comment letter provided. Again, while this project is located within those potential boundary changes, your commission needs to understand and be advised that changes to the city's sphere of influence are subject to a public process, consultation between various governmental agencies, and ultimately approval by the local agency formation commission. At this time, there is no guarantee that changes to the existing City of Arvin sphere of influence will be adopted as requested by the City of Arvin. Currently, the underlying property is located with the Administrative Land Use Authority of the County of Kern and would only be subject to the adopted standards from the City of Arvin if and when the property was formally annexed into the city boundaries. I would also note that just because a project site or property is located within the sphere of influence of a city, that doesn't necessarily mean that that development, if it has not been annexed, is subject to the existing development standards. For example, in Metro Bakersfield, we have a number of land that is located within the City of Baker's sphere of influence. However, they're not subject to the City of Bakersfield development standards. They're subject to the unincorporated Kern County development standards. So the only point in time in which the proposed property would legally be required to be subject to those standards by the City of Arvin, if and when the project sphere of influence changed to include this area, and the property also was annexed into the City of Arvin. Regarding concerns related to runoff, I would just note for your commission that all water generated would be retained on site through the proposed sump. And then finally, implementation of the proposed project is specifically limited to repair work and maintenance of agricultural-related equipment consistent with the existing zone classification. I'm going to jump ahead here real quick. One of the comments in the letters provided to you this evening from, I believe it is the City of Arvin's attorney, indicated specifically that they identified this particular request as not consistent with our existing zoning ordinance. I would just like to note that as being proposed by staff under the zoning ordinance section 1912-030A2, we specifically have a farm machinery and equipment repair use identified as a project that requires a conditional use permit within the A zone district. So I would just like to point out, as the City of Arvin has commented, that this project is inconsistent with the adopted zoning ordinance and with our adopted general plan. Our adopted ordinance itself specifically lists under requirements for a conditional use permit farm machinery and equipment repair as a facility that needs to go through this conditional use process. So I would disagree with the comment from the City of Arvin that this is not subject to the existing and adopted ordinance as it's found on page 98 of our zoning ordinance. I would note for your commission, at one time, the project applicant was interested in amending the general plan and changing the underlying zone district from an agricultural to a commercial development. That project was withdrawn. It was before your commission a couple years ago. I believe it was referred back to staff. The project before your commission today represents a scaled back version of that original proposal. And again, that original proposal could have potentially authorized more intensive development. However, that is not what is being proposed at this time. What I'd like to do now is, before I respond to some of the comments identified by the City of Arvin, I would just like to note, as outlined on page 5 of your staff report, when we evaluate conditional use permits, There are 5 findings that we need to evaluate. Those findings include whether or not the proposed use is consistent with the goals and policies of the applicable general plan or the specific plan, whether or not the proposed use is consistent with the purpose of the applicable district or districts, that would be the A district in this case, whether or not the proposed use is listed as a use subject to a conditional use permit in the applicable zoning district or districts, which I identified earlier. This item is specifically identified as one of those uses. Whether or not the proposed use meets the minimum requirements of the title applicable to this use. And finally, whether the proposed use will not be detrimental to the health and safety and welfare of the public or the property or residents in the vicinity. In reviewing the project in its entirety, it is the determination of staff that the proposed project as presented and being considered by your commission this evening meets all of those required findings that would facilitate the development as being proposed by Mr. Navarro. What I'd like to do now here real quick is I've had an opportunity to review the comment letters that were provided by the City of Arvin. Before they, I would just like to provide you some of staff's initial feedback based on those comments as you go through your public consideration process. And related to the letter that was provided from Allshire and Winder LLP, again, in their first paragraph, I would just note that this particular use is specifically identified as a use authorized with a conditional use permit in the exclusive agricultural zone district. Secondarily, on the second page, as I had mentioned in my presentation, yes, this project is in an area that is potentially subject to future changes in the sphere of influence and potentially incorporation into the City of Arvin. But again, there is no guarantee that that will and will not happen. Staff does not believe we have a legal basis to not consider a proposed project pending a future action that may or may not take place in and of itself. So that can be part of the overall consideration, but staff does not believe that that should be a standalone reason why your commission should approve or deny a project simply based on the fact that another discretionary action is currently being processed. The second thing I would like to note is that this project itself is subject to consistent development standards that all similar type projects are required. Uses within the A district that could be built right now without any discretionary action include a cold storage facility, a project on this site, a home. The applicant is requesting a facility 900 square feet for commercial office and 4,000 roughly garage. Homes could be built larger than that. They would have more septic or sewer issues, and they would be allowed as an authorized use currently right now. Farm labor housing is another example that could be built right now on this particular site that is consistent with the A district that would not require any consideration by your commission. This project is located within the San Joaquin Valley. It is subject to any identified standard development standards that the county has identified, and then additionally other agencies require. For example, they will have to go through and get authority to construct permit from the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. So while staff has not necessarily put that specifically, the project is required to be subject to all applicable codes for other agencies that have jurisdiction in there. I would note that the project itself is getting its water from the Arvin CSD. That is not the City of Arvin. That is the Community Services District. So, we have nothing from the City of, or the Arvin CSD that said that they would not be able to provide water or that they had any concerns specifically related to use of an engineered septic system to provide sewer for this particular site. I would note the remaining portions of that particular comment letter talk about incomplete administrative record, inadequate description of the project, inconsistencies with the existing agricultural land use designations, insufficient evidence to support the required conditional use findings, and inadequate environmental analysis under CEQA. I would just note that staff has reviewed these comments, and we disagree with those determinations as I have mentioned to you in some of the information I provided you this evening. Secondly, real quickly, I would like to respond to the other letter provided by the City of Arvin. This specifically was from the city staff directly, and they did identify that they are opposed to the project. And they identified some specific conditions that should your project, your commission recommend approval of this project, that they would like to have incorporated into the standard conditions of approval. The first one is that they are requesting that the applicant sign and annex an agreement and agree to pay all costs associated with the annexation process. Staff is not recommending and would not recommend that your commission take that condition as part of this project, simply because there is no necessarily reason that we have that this should be the case. The project, as we do not have any policies that require that, and we have no evidence that use of an engineered septic system is not appropriate. Their second requested condition has to do with the indirect source review. Yes, this project is located within the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. It is 100% subject to any of the determinations and requirements from a permitting perspective that San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District is requiring. The third item is that the project applicant pay the City of Arvin's development impact fees based on auto repair shops prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy by the county building official. I would note, simply, this project is not located within their boundaries. Staff does not believe that that's an appropriate condition, just as a property in Western Rosedale would not be appropriate that they pay the City of Bakersfield fees or anything along those lines directly. We do not have a traffic impact fee area in this location or any other specifically development fees that are applicable to unincorporated county property, even though it's adjacent to the City of Arvin. Condition number 4, the project signage program comply with the City of Arvin Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.62 sign regulations. I have not seen that specifically, so I don't know how that is inconsistent or consistent with our adopted sign ordinance. But specifically, our project or this project would be required to adhere to the adopted ordinance within our sign regulations identified in the zoning ordinance. And so staff would not necessarily recommend approval of that, as I do not know if those are inconsistent with our adopted sign ordinance. Number 5, the project development comply with the City of Arvin Title 17 site development standards. Again, that is the same response. Because the project is not located specifically within their jurisdiction, I do not believe that would be appropriate, as those could be inconsistent with the county's adopted standards. And then finally, the applicant shall immediately apply for an out-of-service for sewer service once the City of Arvin's sphere of influence application is approved by the Kern County Local Agency formation. Again, I do not know whether that will or will not happen, and I believe that's inappropriate for your commission to place that requirement on this application. I would note, however, that the condition requires that the applicant do an engineered septic system as required by environmental health. If the applicant chose to go through their own process because they wanted to connect to sewer, they would absolutely be able to, and staff would not oppose if they wanted to go through their own merits and go through that process to receive an out-of-service requirement and connect to the city's sewer treatment facility. Just given the information as a whole, staff does not believe that it's appropriate to mandate that at this time, given the fact that we don't have any of the specific policies in place. In conclusion, given the fact that this facility is compatible with the existing underlying agricultural zone district, that the use that is being proposed does not have any long-scale cumulative impacts, that the facility itself is very consistent and subject to every standard development impact requirement that any regular building would be required. Staff has determined that this project is exempt from any further evaluation or review as outlined in CEQA sections 15183. Based on the comments I've received, I'm still comfortable that this project can meet that exemption. Therefore, it is the recommendation of staff that your commission approve the conditional use permit in accordance with the recommended conditions and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the attached draft resolution. That completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions your commission may have.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I question staff?
Of course.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes, sir.
when did you receive this communication from the attorney for Arvin and the city of Arvin? I mean, they're bringing it in to us tonight at the meeting. Obviously, we don't have time to read and absorb what's in here. You said you've read over part of it, but to bring it in on the night of the meeting, expect us to make a decision on any new items contained in this is ridiculous. So, I mean, we've kind of got a quasi-rule of getting it in on time so that we have a chance to get it and absorb the information before we make a decision. So my question is, have you read this whole thing from the attorney as well as from the city of Arvin?
Commissioner Sprague, through the chair, a couple different things. One, I was aware that the city of Arvin did have some concerns. They had not indicated to me that they were going to be providing anything in writing. Based on their concerns, we tried to make sure that our staff report identified those concerns so that they could be considered by your commission. This is a public hearing, so clearly any information provided can be accepted, should be accepted as part of the overall process. I got the comment letters probably about 10 minutes before the meeting started. That gave me an opportunity to scan through them, to review them. I do believe that I have adequately reviewed them based on the comments they have provided, and I have tried to provide your commission with the summary of what the comments stated and then staff's response, as they are very similar to some of the comments that were already incorporated into our staff report. So I do believe that your commission can take them into consideration. They will have an opportunity to provide any further comment. But I do believe, based on my quick analysis and review of what was provided, that I have adequately identified the key points and comments that they have identified and are concerned about, and adequately provided your commission some information to make a decision this evening.
So there's no new information contained in this correspondence from the attorney or the city of Arvin that we don't have in our package?
Specifically, in the previous comment from the city of Arvin, they did not mention inconsistencies with the existing zoning ordinance or anything along those lines. But again, I believe that I've been able to identify that and point out that it is not inconsistent. And so again, based on review, I am comfortable that I have identified and responded to adequately.
So my next question would be, is it appropriate for us, since we've received this information just tonight, to refer this back to staff, or to continue this hearing, or to take testimony tonight from the people in the audience, since they're here tonight, and then schedule another public hearing later on? Or should we proceed with making a decision based on staff's recommendation to approve the project?
Commissioner Sprague, again, I believe that I have adequately responded. Clearly, that is a decision that lies solely within your commission and what other commissioners say. If you were debating, I would recommend not to refer it back. That requires re-advertisement, things along those lines. If you went that direction, I would recommend that you go with a continuance as opposed to a refer back. I would recommend that you open the public hearing, listen to all the comments that are provided, both from the applicant and from the city of Arvin. Again, in my opinion, I believe that I've adequately responded to where your commission can move forward should you want to. However, based on additional comments you hear tonight, based on your comfort level, if you would like additional time, that is within your prerogative, and I would only ask that the project, if that was the case, be continued as opposed to referred back, as that changes our advertising requirements. The applicant has to reapply and pay fees, and again, I don't think that would necessarily be appropriate at this time.
So we'd take testimony then tonight from the people in the audience, the general public, and then continue it, and then bring it back as another public hearing, and then imply all those comments into that hearing at that point in time.
Commissioner Sprague, through the chair, if that is what the commission's recommendation was, were to continue, staff would, whatever date was continued, prepare an additional staff report. We would summarize and respond to the comments in writing, as I've tried to do verbally tonight. It would come before that hearing, and all those comments that were provided would be incorporated into the new staff report on that particular day.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to vote on this, basically supporting staff's recommendation tonight. I'm very familiar with this project. It came up before the Planning Commission a few years back, same material, same opposition, same scenario. I remember it well. So basically, I think staff's on the right direction and pointing us in the right direction with a recommendation. So from that standpoint, I am prepared to make a motion on it. I'm prepared to listen to testimony tonight and possibly continue this back. I don't feel comfortable about making a firm decision without really looking at this material, but since staff has previewed it, and feels comfortable with it and still makes the same recommendation, makes me kind of go along with this, what my original thoughts were of going along with their recommendation. So I don't know what the rest of the commissioners want to do, and I'd be happy to listen to the rest of the commissioners as to what their wishes would be about a continuance or listening to testimony tonight or what. But that's kind of where my thinking is at.
Thank you, Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments?
Just to, Commissioner Sprague, thank you for your comment. I think, unfortunately, I am not as familiar as Commissioner Sprague is on this project, so I think since we are here at this hearing, I think it's important to allow people that came here on public behalf to speak on both sides so we could have a better understanding. And I think it is important. There's a lot of information for us to see here and review, and it is difficult to make any decisions without having complete understanding of any project. So I think I would ask the chairman to allow the public speaking to commence, and then we could make a formal motion at that time.
Agreed. Commissioner McGiffey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just point over, I think the same thing Rick said. I just wanted to make sure if we need to make a motion to allow public testimony, or is that the course of action here?
Let's just allow testimony and proceed, and then we'll
Commissioner
make a
Giffey,
decision.
through the chair, that is just a standard practice. They just need the chairman to open up public testimony before anybody would be able to come up and speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. That being said, let's go ahead and open the public testimony period here. So first of all, we'll have the applicant come forward if you're inclined. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
Chairman
Good
Ashley,
evening.
real
My
quick.
name is John Wilson.
Excuse us, sir. I
Sorry about that.
apologize.
I'm sorry, Chairman Ashley. I do not believe, I could be wrong. Is Mr. Wilson, are you representing the applicant? Because usually the applicant goes first.
I'm representing the applicant.
I apologize. I did not realize that you were here on their behalf. I'm sorry.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
My name is John Wilson, W-I-L-S-O-N. I represent Adi and Zephy Navarro. I've known them for years. Real quickly, I want to applaud the planning department and their staff for doing a very excellent job of going through what turned out to be a difficult problem. I want to applaud county council. While he was giving his dissertation, I was able to read the information. I just got it 3 minutes to 7 myself. And I agree with his analysis is the best that I can do. We, Navarros, agree with the recommendations and conditions and conclusions of the staff report. And we issued 2 statements on the statements by Arvin. And I'll be available after the city of Arvin gives their discussion to answer any more questions. The second paragraph says the city has attempted to work with the project applicant. And they mentioned the only thing that agreement or disagreement they had was on the significant impacts drinking water supply. Nowhere in their rest of the letter did they mention that they have problems. They mentioned that we had environmental problems. They mentioned citations of acts I've never heard of in my life, which the county council has gone through. There's little hate and discontent here somewhere. Page 2. This is a dig to the great county. By the way, this is my 50th year working here. Unfortunately, rather than providing the documents as a matter of courtesy as typically done between public entities, or instead of complying with mandatory legal requirements, blah, 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 the county ignored the request. Now, this isn't the way to deal with people. This is compromise is the name of the game. We don't slam you in the face and tell you you're ignorant, you didn't do us good. We try and work with people. County council, planning department has worked with my client to try and get a project. And when they've compromised, to some degree, the county's compromised, and we all are in agreement with the effects. If this project was in the city of Arvin, it'd be approved today. There's no doubt about it. There is no problems. There's no environmental problems. There's no wastewater problems. But because they are not in the city of Arvin, the city of Arvin doesn't like them, doesn't like their project, and is against it. 60 feet away, we'd be okay. Now, I'm going to cease here real quickly. Mr. Navarro owns the same business in the city of Arvin. He has a tire shop, the same business in the city of Arvin. He is not coming in from anywhere. He is a resident. He lives, he pays money, he hires people in the city of Arvin. Somewhere in here, there's a big disconnect. He's going to do the same process. He's going to service the same people as he does now. And he's about maybe a mile away from where his shop is. Hopefully you'll approve this project. I understand that we have this is 3 times thicker than your staff report. And County Council's done an excellent job. Hopefully you'll approve it. Mr. Navarro's a good man, he's a working man. He deserves a good project, and he's taking a step forward in his life and for the city of Arvin, even though he's 60 feet away from the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I have a question for Mr. Wilson.
Sure.
Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming and speaking today. Quick question, you said the applicant already has a business in City of Arvin, does the same type of work. What is that?
The same tire shop, he does residential tires and farming tires. His lot is so small that we've tried to enlarge it, but we had physical sizes. So we found this lot, 6 acres, which he's gonna use a few of it, to use his larger equipment tires, his farming equipment, to run down there and still keep his shop in the city of Arvin. He just outgrown his facility. We can't make it any bigger or better. He needs more dirt. And this is the best thing he could find. And he's tried to work with the city of Arvin. Call it what you will, it just didn't work out. It may work out tomorrow, but not today, as you can see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Are there other members of the audience that would like to speak in regards to this project? Please state your name and spell your last name for the record, please, sir.
Jake Raper, city planner, City of Arvin, 141 Plumtree Drive. Last name is spelled Raper, R-A-P-E-R. I would like to commend County Council on his summary of the project. Actually, he's the assistant director, not the County Council. But anyway, I provided to the chair and staff 3 documents tonight. One is aerial photographs of the project site and the intersection, which is the urban intersection for City of Arvin. And on the second page of that photograph, you'll see a commercial development as right at the corner. Basically, it is in the City of Arvin. It is on a sewer system. The project is immediately adjacent to the city, and the city's position is that the development does need to comply with the City of Arvin standards. The other document that we provided to you is from our city attorney, which highlights a number of issues that they take exception to the conclusions of the staff report as was summarized by the city planner or county planner. A second document is the May 8th letter from the City of Arvin itself. We identified that the project is incomplete record. Basically, the staff report that the Planning Commission only has one of the letters that were provided to the county, and there's 3 additional letters associated with that, and staff believes that the commission does not have the complete record to make a decision. The other item that's spoken to by County Council and by our planning staff is that staff cited section 15813 as the appropriate environmental document. Basically, that section is highlighted in attachment 2, identifies that decision has to be made upon, quote, completion of initial study or other analysis. Staff has not received nor has provided that analysis to support the justification of that section. The other item that I noticed tonight in reading the staff report, they also referred to section 1562, subsequent EIRs and negative declaration for an adopted project. I think that's the wrong citation for this specific project, because I think they were referring to the county's EIR that was adopted in, I think it's like 2004. So I think there's some inconsistencies, and maybe that needs to be revisited by county staff. The city of Arvin is provisionally opposing the project, and we've identified a number of items associated with our provisional opposition. Attachment 3 is the county staff report that was prepared for this commission in March of 2018. And if you look at the site plan and the description, it's exactly the same thing that is being proposed tonight, as, quote, a different brand and a different kind of classification. But the reality is, it's the same project that was submitted in 2018 and considered briefly by the commission. You didn't really take action on it, you continued it off calendar. The city engineer has provided a letter, which is in the packet as well, identifying a number of concerns associated with the improvements, which are different from county staff's conditions. Since the project is immediately adjacent to, and it will be in the city at some point in time, that the city feels very strongly that those conditions for the urbanization of this project be in compliance with the city standards. The city has provided several different sections of Title 17, which is site development standards, as well as the sign ordinance standard that the staff feels very strongly should be incorporated as conditions as part of the project approval. The reality is, is that basically the project has been rebranded. As part of our letter to the commission, the city would not want to necessarily restrict the operation of this tire shop just for farm machinery and farm repair, because I don't think that's a reasonable condition or restriction to put upon any kind of business that is trying to do commercial services. The staff has indicated that they're only going to be farm machinery and repair, and there's nothing in no way that the county is going to be able to regulate that to say that they cannot service the general public their residential tires. Staff feels very strongly that the commission needs to consider the information that is provided to you tonight. I think a 5-minute review and a summary by the county planning staff is not sufficient for the planning commission to totally take into consideration the city of Arvin's concerns. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to respond to any questions the commission or staff may have of me.
Thank you, Mr. Raper. Are there questions or comments for Mr. Raper? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I do. Thank you.
Sure.
What would the city of Arvin like to see in that location if they had their choice?
Commercial,
What kind of commercial?
general commercial. If you look at the aerial photograph just to directly across the street, the city has the general plan designation for planned unit development for commercial, and that is going to be the premier and entranceway into the city of Arvin. The city of Arvin has expended hundreds of thousands of dollars to incorporate a new park within that area as part of the center for the city of Arvin's growth and imaging. And so basically, the city is not necessarily opposed to the commercial project coming in there. The city is opposed to the standards that would be levied by the county, which are less standards than the city. In addition, the city is very concerned with the project going on septic. Once the septic system goes in, no matter if it's adopted to the city or annexed to the city, that investment is too large for the project applicant to abandon that and cause the sewer to be hooked up. That's why the city is very strenuously objecting to the project, that we know it's going to come into the city at some point. We want that project to be developed to city standards. We want it to be successful. We want it to occur. Now, if it occurs in the county with those conditions that the city has recommended, even though it's, quote, the project is not within our sphere of influence, we do have an application. We have a letter of support from the county identifying that the sphere of influence is a logical extension. Our SOI is scheduled for LAFCO on May 22nd for consideration. The city is working with the county for the master tax sharing agreement. There's email correspondence between Mr. Thomas and Mr. Breckenridge sharing the cost of the consultant services to develop the master services agreement. There's a fire services contract on the city manager's desk that is going to be presented to the city council for their action. And so the project is immediately able to annex to the city once the SOI is adopted by LAFCO, which could be as early as May 22nd. The county has stipulated two conditions before we can actually annex anything. One is that the master tax sharing agreement be adopted, and secondly, the fire services agreement be adopted as well. And so both of those are in the works and is progressing well between the city and the county. You know, I have to say from a city planning standpoint, City of Arvin has nothing but positive relationships with the county. And it is not a pleasant thing for us as city staff to come to the County Planning Commission nor county staff to say, we do not want this project to go there, and these are the reasons why. And so we have to do this in order to put this information in the record, and should the Planning Commission approve it, that gives us the ability to take the next step as provided in your county ordinance.
Yeah,
So-
I just was wondering, is this the chicken and egg thing? Is this something that the city is pursuing now for annexation because this project's here versus we've always wanted to annex it, we're just getting around to it? Because it seems to me we're kind of now wanting to annex because someone wants to do something there.
And that's absolutely not correct. The city has been working on the SOI and the MSR project for about a year. The city has expended about $60,000 in the preparation of that document to get it to a position to be considered by LAFCO. And so it is the city's long-range plan to annex these projects. It's not just because the applicant is there at this point in time. Now, as you review the correspondence, as you have an opportunity to review the correspondence, you'll see that as early as 2017, the city's had dialogue and communication with the applicant as to what it would take to connect to the sewer. And so as of this date, the applicant has not provided any formal applications to start that process. We advised him what it would take to annex to the city, and that was before we had the SOI in the position that we have it today, which would include amendment to the SOI, the annexation, the general plan amendment, and the rezoning. Now, as you may recall, back in 2018, when the item was presented to you, it had all those segments of taking it from an ag designation to a commercial designation. And the city is not opposing that kind of land use in that area, but what we are opposing is the fact that the applicant is not pursuing the recommendations of the city to cause the project to be connected to sewer. And so, and there's a number of issues associated with it, just other than the sewer. As you may know, City of Arvin is a very economically depressed community. And to allow other commercial activities right adjacent to the City of Arvin is a disservice to our residents of the City of Arvin. The Navarros provide a good service. They're very successful, and we certainly want them to be successful in their future pursuits as well. There's no animosity, there's no anger, there's no hate to the applicant. It's a process that we're going through. And so the process costs money, and that is a concern of the Navarros, which I can understand that, but that's just the way the development process here is here in California. So
Is the main stickler here that he has to get to the sewer, or are there other things that this letter from the attorney wants reviewed too? Because it doesn't sound like the attorney wants, what I can tell, doesn't want the development there. It seems like there's a lot of other issues that development should not be there based upon what the tone of the letter is. So I'm gotta look at it briefly, obviously, but I just want to make sure that this is something that the city wants to have versus just because it's not on city land, then we don't really want it there.
no, the city absolutely wants commercial development. Basically, we had to take two approaches. One is in April 18th, we requested information. We requested a meeting to be set up with county staff, and unfortunately, that didn't happen. Maybe it's our time constraints and those kinds of issues. We did send the April 18th letter by certified mail as well as regular mail to county staff. Unfortunately, all the letters and the attachments to that letter was not included in your planning packet. And so the city attorney's letter is one of those quote technical letters that in case we do have to appeal and in case we do have to go to the next step for litigation, that provides the record to doing so. The city's letter is a little bit different. That's why we say a provisional opposition, because if these conditions as recommended or requested by the city are implemented, it's the position of the city manager that the city would not pursue any further opposition to the project. So.
So just to wrap up, it makes it sound that the city is for the project, you guys want the development to happen in the area. Sounds like the concerning is that it's not falling under commercial guidelines or under agricultural guidelines, which if the city does expand its sphere of influence, which it sounds like you guys are in the process of doing currently, that this project will not fall in the designated zoning you would like to have in that area once it is part of the city of Arvin. Is that my understanding?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, in reviewing this several years ago and reviewing this again tonight, it seems like a force play by the city of Arvin to force the property owner to hook up to Arvin's sewer system, which is in the city, not in the county. The truth of the matter is, if they did a development on this for commercial tire, there would be a septic tank there to service the employees of the site, which would be very small, probably the same size as a regular residential house, probably of less square feet than what a residential would be, but still a 1,500 to 2,000 gallon septic tank is a whole lot less money than spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for this type of development on the corner to hook up to the city of Arvin sewer just because the city of Arvin wants it that way. This is not their jurisdiction. This is our jurisdiction. And we've got a conditional use permit scenario, and they've complied in accordance with what Mr. Wilson's testimony was. I don't see anything there other than a force play to try to get the property owner to spend a whole lot of money hooking up to city sewer when it's not required to hook up to city sewer. I appreciate Mr. Raper. I know him personally from his term as Tulare County Planning Director. He's very intelligent. He ran that organization with an iron fist. And I understand where he's coming from representing the city of Arvin. But I think here, it's a unique scenario to get development on that corner that helps the city of Arvin and the occupants of the city of Arvin and the people that live around it. And I think the only stumbling block here is a few minor technicalities that the city's throwing at us to try to kick this out so that we can force, so that they can force them into annexation and hooking up to their public sewer. So based on that, and based what I see the use is on a conditional use permit, if this were any other place in the jurisdiction for us to make a decision on, it'd be a slam dunk. So basically, I mean, if we get down to it, I agree with Mr. Murphy and his recommendation from county staff that this conditional use permit be approved and move forward tonight. But I would come back to the other commissioners and listen to their comments again and other testimony if there is. But I see no reason why we couldn't approve this project tonight. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Sprague. Thank you, Mr. Ripper.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience?
Good evening. My name is Ida Navarro. My husband Seferino Navarro. We have owned this property for 3 years. Since the beginning that we bought it, our first step was going to the city of Arvin. We offered the property 2 times to annex to the city. They declined. They said they did not have the funds. That's why we started the whole process with the county. A few years ago, when we wanted to do a zone change, they opposed it. For the zone change, so we went back to the county, and we decided to do a farm shop. On their attorney letter, they're saying we're hiding behind this farm shop name. I am more than happy to show you our Board of Equalization paperwork. Farm used a special tax rate. 70% of our business is farm. We go out to the farm, we service their machinery, their trucks, whatever is used for farm only. That's the only way they can get the special tax rate that they get. Sometimes they come to us, they bring us the tires, because we're busy, we're very busy. So when we say we're gonna do only a farm tire shop, that's what we're gonna do. We do not do any repairs whatsoever. We've been in Arvin for over 24 years. We have a business there. We just need to grow. And unfortunately, there was some issues with the state doing a divider, so it closed the access to our street. Our business is down 50%. If it wasn't because of the farm, we would have we would have closed a long time ago. We are the only tire shop in Arvin. We've been there. No one else, the other shops come and go, but they can't stay there. We're not trying to do anything bad. Yes, it's a huge property. All we want is a shop to do the farm tires for the trucks to come in so we can fix their tires. Everything is gonna be inside.
No noise.
No noise. We're gonna have 1 bathroom because no regular people are gonna come there. Just the farm employees drop off their tires, fix their tires. That's it. 1 bathroom. We have gone to the city so many times. We have tried. They keep saying in their letters that we don't wanna work with them, that we haven't responded to them. That is not true. We just had a meeting with them 2 days ago. And one of the things I questioned them, he keeps saying about the sphere of influence, that in order for them to give us sewer, we have to be in their sphere of influence. One of the things that I brought up to his attention 2 days ago when we met, in 2017, we received a letter from the city asking for a $5,000 deposit so they could start the process and see if they had capacity for the sewer. We brought this letter to the county, and then 2 months later, county said, oh, this is not a well-served letter, you need to go back. So we went, we had a meeting with the city manager, with the mayor, asking, where do we pay this money, where's this application? No one could answer us, no one could take our money or anything. So this was 2017, we're in 2019. 2017, they didn't need the sphere of influence, and now they do? It doesn't make sense. That is something that I brought up 2 days ago, and they said, oh, we would have caught it. I don't know. They said something about capacity. Well, 2 years later, they have built 300 houses now. Houses that have 2-3 bathrooms. We're only asking for 1 bathroom. We're not bringing anything bad. We want, it's gonna be a nice shop with trees, with parking. I don't understand why it's so difficult for the city to let us build there or they keep opposing. That property used to have an abandoned house, trailer. There was homeless people living there full of trash. You should see it now. It's all cleaned up. It's fenced, it's cleaned. So all we're asking for is your help. Help us grow. Help us get out of where we're at, that we're not able to grow anymore. And when we say farm shop, that's all we're doing.
And also that, we're gonna keep the shop in Arvin, for the residents and that area, We're gonna be our own how you say?
Competition.
Competition, yeah. We are the only shop in Arvin, And right now, my wife say, my business is down like 50%. My employees, I tell one of my main employers is taking a day off now. And I have some other employers in unemployment right now because there's no work, right now, in the city. We don't have and also, we not, on the shop that we own right now, we don't do automotive. We do only tire service. We don't provide alignments, brakes. And we try to bring this to Arvin, and they're opposing. I don't understand this. Doing this is gonna attract more business to Arvin. Doing that and helping the community, the farming community. That's like my wife say is like 70-80% of my business farming. We're not gonna do. We're not gonna bring big equipment on that area. We go to the site, they call me, hey, we need a tire, a big tire, and we just go to them, they're not gonna bring the tractors there, And we are trying to get help from you guys because we've been waiting for 3 years already, more than 3 years, I think. And, I like to, thank you for your support and let's hope you approve this project. It's gonna be good for Arvin, But
Thank you.
thank you
So,
for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Navarro.
Navarro, so just to clarify, thank you guys for coming up, number one, and I appreciate you guys always trying to expand business. I know in all communities, Arvin, County of Kern, we always appreciate people trying to do business. But from what you're saying, it sounds like you actually do want to work with the city of Arvin and would like to be part of their services, but you're saying that it just somehow the communications kind of been broken down and the communication didn't really get anywhere further. Is that my understanding?
We tried, when we first bought this property 3 years ago, we went twice to the city trying, offer the property for them. Do you want to annex to the city? And both times their answer was, we do not have the funds. Then when we started the whole process, the very first time to do a zone change and everything, that's when the city started talking to us and said, because we needed the sewer, we need sewer. We got water already, we have water on the property. We went and we said we needed sewer. Their answer was, well, you need to annex to the city to get sewer. That's when that $5,000 deposit came and that letter saying, that they needed a deposit to start the process. We tried and no one knew where to make that payment. No one knew what application. So we kept going with the county.
Right.
Now, the last year, the paperwork we received from the city, in order for us to annex, they were requesting that all the tests and study that have already been done by the county that we have paid be redone. And I think the fees for the annexation, we were looking at $50,000 to $65,000. We gone to LAFCO, we have asked for all the annexation fees. And it's just a huge amount. It's either annex to the city or start building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro.
Thank you.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record, please, sir.
My name is Abel Altamirano, and I am a worker of Mr. Navarro. And I just came here to look good. No, I'm just playing. Okay, so here it goes. My name is Abel Altamirano, and I'm not here just because I work at Pacific Tire. I'm here because I believe that this change will be good, not just for me, but for everybody that lives in Arvin, because from the time I started working at Pacific Tire, people have been telling me every day, when are we going to start doing something else other than tires? And every day I ask them that I really don't know when. But now that Severino, the one who wants to put this building in Arvin, finally wants to give the people what they want, and somebody wants to keep us from doing that, so I ask you to please let us do this, not just for us, but for the people. Okay?
Thank you. Would you spell your last name for the record, please?
Altamirano, Altamirano.
Thank you.
And if you guys have any questions, I do nothing but tires every day.
Thank you, Mr. Altamiro. Are there any more questions or comments on this particular project?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff. So, Mr. Murphy, I've heard a few things going back and forth, and I understand that this zoning ordinance falls under agricultural based upon the type of service they're providing. I did hear from the applicant and the representative stating that it's very similar to the type of work they're doing right now. The question I have is, if for any reason they did do repairs for residential vehicles or tires, how would that affect their zoning and on this current zoning situation? Would they be in some sort of violation of the agricultural zoning?
Commissioner Judge, through the chair, yes, just like any other conditional use permit, which your commission has approved, if you are not complying with your conditions, you are subject to revocation, in which revocation proceedings can come forward and your authorization to operate there can be revoked by the land use authority and through your commissioner, the board of supervisors, as part of that process. So that process is very similar.
So, and that was my concern, is I hearing comments from the applicant and what they do is, I'd hate to have them be in some sort of violation if they did happen to have crossover sales between both the facilities. Because what I am looking at, and again, I was not here back in 2018, but I do see a staff report from 2018, which shows a zone change modification to make this into commercial zoning. And looking at the map, the design, the site plan, it looks completely identical to what we're looking at today.
Commissioner Judge, through the chair, so a couple different things. Staff responded to the application that was submitted. The applicant provided a general plan amendment zone change. That was the direction we were going down. It wasn't until after the commission or the project was referred back did staff even understand or realize that they only wanted to do farm machinery equipment. So whether or not the site looks the same, the previous approval would have allowed him to do a lot more. Now, in the discussions with the project applicant, they have another site where they can do other type of tire changes that are not farm-related equipment. So the applicant is comfortable, and that is why the application changed, because the original proposal, I don't believe they were going to keep their same site. Now, because this project is limited to only the farm machinery and equipment, I believe it's the applicant's intent to keep both sites open. The other site, they could make any other changes or other things they wanted to do that is not located within the unincorporated Kern County or is not subject to this conditional use permit. So the application that did come in back in 2018 was a general plan amendment and a zone change. And as your commission's aware, once you have a different zoning, the uses that are allowed under that, while they still may have to go through a precise development plan process, are much varied. They're much more intense. Going through a conditional use permit, the uses are very specific and limited. That is why staff is comfortable that this project is in fact consistent with the agricultural zoning as we've conditioned it, and that it is a use that qualifies for the sequel 15183 exemption because of the limited scope of this particular request versus what was before your commission back in 2018. Whether or not the building looks the same, that it really was what was uses were going to be incorporated in it. And the previous, if it had gone forward, would not have had the condition specifically limiting the project applicant to their scope and service in terms of to farm machinery only. And again, to be quite honest with you, staff was not aware that that was specifically what they focused on when the request first came in back in 2018. And so I do disagree that this is a repackaged project. It is a very specific project, just like anything else would be. It does not include the general plan amendment. It does not include the zone change. Therefore, any future development would not be authorized unless they went through that type of process or unless it was very specific to ag-related uses that were identified within our zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Finished?
Well, a couple more things I have a question for. Is Comanche Drive, is that shared with the city of Arvin and the county of Kern, or is the county of Kern responsible for all of Comanche Drive?
Commissioner Judge, through the chair, I actually do not know that specific answer at this time.
Okay, thank you. My last comment would just be, Mr. Sprague, go ahead.
Mr. Murphy, could we consider adding the residential tire changing at this particular, into this conditional use permit also, so that if he wanted to do tires at both places for residential tires, he could have that ability to do that along with agricultural as set forth in the conditional use permit?
Commissioner Sprague, to the chair, no, you would not be able to. The ordinance specifically specifies farm machinery and equipment repair. When you get into other types of equipment and other types of, then you fall under the commercial district. That's why specifically that it is authorized with the conditional use permit at this location at this time. So no, you would not be able to incorporate that aspect into this conditional use permit.
But that does not prevent him from coming at a later date to amend the conditional use permit to add that on if he were incorporated in the city or Arvin or something like that. We're not restricting the use of that with this conditional use permit. He would be able to still make an application for one either with the city of Arvin or with the county, depending where it was at.
Commissioner Sprague, through the chair, to do that for our process, he would actually, the Navarros would have to turn in a general plan amendment and zone change and change the underlying zoning.
Right.
If it became incorporated into the city of Arvin, it would be subject to their zoning ordinance, and I don't know what their specific provision was. And again, I know that your commission has not closed the public testimony portion of the hearing just yet, but I would like to note, yes, there is a process that is going forward right now relating to the sphere of influence and the potential annexation. But again, there is no guarantee that that will or will not be approved. And I absolutely appreciate Mr. Raper's position in terms of it's a disservice to the city of Arvin. I guess I would flip that and say, well, it's also a disservice to any unincorporated property that happens to touch the boundaries of a sphere of influence if no development could occur until something does or does not happen, which while there is discussions and while there is a process going through it, it is a public process. And your commission is extremely aware that until an action is final, I don't know how it will go. And there could be a lot of different things that could impact and affect. And so staff's opinion is that it's a disservice to this business owner to specifically hold off making a decision that is complete with all the development standards that the city planner specifically even said that they support, other than it's not connected to the city of Arvin. Again, if and when that changes, then they are welcome to continue to work with the city of Arvin. But again, just staff's fundamental position is not to make a decision simply because of that is also a disservice to the property owners. And while I appreciate the thought of incorporating the city's policies, just like any property, when you buy property, whether it was 1 year ago, whether it was 3 years ago, most people who purchase property look and see what is the property zoned, what are the development standards that I have to adhere to. To arbitrarily say, well, you may have looked at this 3 years ago and said this is what the standard is, but now they have to be different just because I'm asking you to, staff believes that there could potentially be some concerns too. And again, I don't know how more restrictive some of their policies may or may not be, or some of their requirements may or may not be. But that is a concern, is that most property owners evaluate what their property is designated prior to purchasing the property. And so staff is just concerned that it's also unfair to specifically require those other standards when that is not what the property was subject to when they first purchased it. But again, the last comment I just would like to note is your commission still is in the public process of taking the testimony. So I just wanted to remind your commission that has not been closed yet.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Sprague, do you
I
have?
believe county council is asking to speak.
Sure. Mr.
Yes,
Hall.
Chairman, if I may, I would also like to add that it's not just a process with LAFCO, there's actually an election element to LAFCO. So to assume that this annexation could go through would actually be an assumption of a vote by those that would be annexed, and I'm not even sure as to what size annexation. It sounds like they're just doing a sphere, which is not an annexation and may never actually happen. It's kind of a idea of where we think a city might grow. But there is an election element to an annexation process, so, you know, we should not be waiting on a LAFCO process that may never happen and could be derailed by the citizenry itself.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Commissioner Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate all the information they're giving here, and I think this is a project that I believe that the county is behind, and I believe the city of Arvin, in their own way, is behind of this project being come to fruition as well. I just want to make a comment to my fellow commissioners here. Is unfortunately there's a lot of information here, and I personally I would like to read through this to understand this a little better. Obviously, there's a lot of communication going on between the city of Arvin, the applicant, and the county. And I would just say that I would not personally feel comfortable to make a decision on this without getting some more understanding, reading some documentation. And I think, as Commissioner Sprague mentioned earlier, maybe the idea of a continuance to allow a little bit more time to review this, to make sure we make a strong judgment, not only for the applicant themselves, and making sure that we don't miss something. I just want to make that comment prior to any other motion that's being made.
Thank you, Commissioner Josh. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for your input there. I agree. It's fairly presumptuous to assume that the sphere of influence is going to go through. You know, we're voting today, or theoretically voting today, based on what we know now and what the current zoning is. So, but I do appreciate what Commissioner Josh has said, and I'm willing to entertain whatever motion is made in terms of continuance or a vote, my fellow commissioners. Sure. Are there any further comments? Mr. Raper, I know you stood up again. Anything else you'd like to say?
I did. Thank you, Chair. Jake Raper, R-A-P-E-R. As I stated before, LAFCO is to consider the city's SOI on May 22nd. That way we'll know if the city and LAFCO takes action to approve or conditionally approve the SOI. This way, once that occurs, and then the city can be in a position to do two things. One is to provide an out-of-area service for a sewer, which we cannot do until the SOI is established. During the 2017 correspondence by the former Community Development Director, I think she was not aware of that law and that requirement. And so there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of discussions occurred between the Navarros and the city. The one thing that is sort of misrepresenting the city's position is that the city does not pay for annexations. The property owners and the applicants pay for all the studies and the annexation application process. That's why the city said they could not afford it, and evidently the message was not clear to the Navarros that the cost of annexation would be upon the applicant and not the city. So the city staff would request the commission to consider a continuance until your next planning commission meeting This will allow the commission to see and read the rest of the information that was not provided in the county staff report. And by that time, we'll know whether or not LAFCO is going to take action on our SOI or not. And the county council is absolutely correct. There is a process for actual annexation where the property owners and the registered voters play a big role into making that determination. And so, again, the city of Arvin is not opposed to commercial development. City of Arvin, as I stated earlier, would not necessarily want to restrict the Navarros only for farm machinery and equipment repair, because somebody's going to be driving by and see the Pacific Tire out there, they want to go in, and no business likes to turn away customers. And so the city is very supportive of the annexation, it's very supportive of commercial development within the city. When commercial development, again, is in direct competition to a community that is economically distressed, that's where the city council and the city will be stepping forward and saying, we want that development to occur within the city and not in the county. And so I would encourage and request the commission to continue the public hearing. That way you don't have to re-advertise. Give the balance of the commissioners opportunity to review the report and the information submitted more in detail, rather than a 5-minute summary by the assistant director.
Thank you, Mr. Raper. I would also suggest too, depending on what our council decides to do today, it sounds like the city wants this to work, and unfortunately, these applicants have a project that's been sitting for multiple years, and obviously for them, financial stability is going to come when they can open their business. If this does, depending on what we vote on today, I would request you either way to try reaching out to them, see if we come to a resolution to help them to make this project come to fruition. And as a property owner, for the Navarros as well, if this was a commercial use project, not only would they have more opportunity to grow their business, they would also have more value and more worth of the property as well, too, being commercial value compared to agricultural value. I believe for anyone to have a commercial property in that area, it's their benefit. But for them to go through a zone change here at the county is a difficult process and a timely process. So if that's something that, again, depending on what we decide today, I think I would request of you, if a continuance is granted today, that you guys work, and if something cannot come to, if some sort of agreement cannot come, then at that time our council could hopefully take a vote on it. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Sprague.
have we closed the public hearing yet, or
We
not?
have not.
Okay, I think you have another speaker.
Mr. Wilson?
Real briefly, I'm sorry to be last. The commissioner asked about Comanche Drive. On the screen, it shows to the left, or whatever you have on your screen, is a dentist's office, and it shows the full width of the street being improved. You can see how wide it is. Just behind that, you'll see a truck with a white hood parked. That is Mr. Navarro's property. It's narrow back there. Mr. Navarro will be required to make Type A subdivision standard, which you normally see, curb gutter, sidewalk, paving, everything, all the way back 900 feet probably, 930 feet. So that width of intersection will be improved. Yes, the answer to your question is yes. They share, the center line is the dividing line between the city of Arvin and the county of Kern. On the other side of the street is a C-store, commercial store, and you can see where he's improved full width. There's a white van truck back there. It necks down to a narrow area on the city side. There's a subdivision back there which is not improved to full width. Mr. Navarro will do more on his side than the city of Arvin has on his side. Real briefly, regarding the continuance, Mr. Navarro has invested 3 years in this. The way I understand it, and I'm not the smartest person in the world, that the sphere of influence could kill his 3-year application. It could render everything that the planning department has done into a conundrum, if you will. I would ask to give Mr. Navarro the satisfaction of his 3 years and not put this to a vote of a LAFCO, as Mr. Raper says. and put it into a quandary of what do we do now, the sphere of influence? Do we need to re-advertise? Do we need to charge Mr. Navarro more money yet? I would ask that you give him the satisfaction of a vote, although I realize a continuance based upon this mass of information the city has given to purposefully delay this until the LAFCO vote. I would ask you to vote for Mr. Navarro as the staff has recommended, ask you to vote as the city, as the county council has recommended, and give him his due justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any further questions, comments from the audience? Seeing none, I will now close the public comment period.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion on this tonight and vote on it. And so I would listen to other commissioners if they have anything to say before I make that motion, and we'll just see where it falls out from there.
Thank you, Commissioner Sprague. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two things real quick. One, again, just so staff does believe that we have adequately responded as required under law to the comments that have been provided, and we are comfortable that you, Commission, can choose to move forward if you would like. The only other thing I would note is even if a sphere of influence were to be approved, the project and the land would still be under the unincorporated Kern County jurisdiction, and even if we came back after that, that change would not necessarily change staff's recommendation that engineering septic systems would still be fine in terms of our recommendation for the land use. You know, it would not be subject to any of the standards from the city of Arvin if and until such time as it was formally annexed into the county of Kern. And again, that is a very similar case in Metro Bakersfield, where we recommend septic systems a number of times where they have to go through, even though it's located within the sphere of influence. So the only thing I would note for your commission is, yes, that is another factor that your commission can consider. From a staff perspective, staff, I believe, would still be recommending approval of the project, as we're recommending now, with the use of environmental health approving the water system, which would, or the septic system, which would allow engineered septic systems. So I just wanted to provide that information for your commission as well.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And I noticed you've been reading a lot since we've been going through this debate here, so I really value your latest opinion there, because that tells me you've not uncovered anything new.
Okay, with that, I would be prepared to make a motion. So my motion would be to approve the conditional use permit in accordance with recommended conditions and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution as read into the record by staff, and that's my motion.
Do we have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Three yes, one abstain, one vacant.
Motion carries.
Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you
just,
very much for your time.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Chairman Ashley, just for the record, this action was considered final. Therefore, this project is subject to appeal. For projects where that is the case, the actions are subject to appeal to the Board of Supervisors by any interested person, and no development proposed by any application may be authorized until after the final date of appeal. An appeal may be filed with the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department located at 2700 M Street, Suite 100 in Bakersfield, with a filing fee of $540 on forms available at the Planning and Natural Resources Department. The filing must be made within 14 days of and including the date of this hearing. If no appeal is filed, then the action of your commission is final.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you for your time and listening to the City of Arvin's position. Thank you. Thank you, staff and county council.
Thank you, Mr. Raper.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes our agenda for the evening, so I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm assuming there's not going to be any opposition to
favor,
that,
aye.
so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.